What's up everybody, my name's Brightlife, this is my fancy shirt, and today I look like a very scrawny lumberjack. And today I want to talk to you about 9 things that you need to know about the upcoming Lord of the Rings survival game called Return to Moria. Let's jump into it. Alright, this game was just announced recently, but doing a deep dive on the website, learning a little bit more from the developers, leads us to learn these couple of things. First of all, let's talk about the type of game that this is going to be. This game is going to be a survival crafting game set in the 4th age of Middle-earth. From their store listing, it says this: The Lord of the Rings Return to Moria follows the dwarves as they embark on a new adventure to reclaim their legendary home of Moria beneath the Misty Mountains. Players will join forces to survive, craft, build, and explore the iconic, sprawling mines. Courageous expeditioners will need to be vigilant as mysterious dangers await. Now, this game, of course, calls to mind many other survival crafting games like Minecraft Valheim, which really brought the realism version of this into play. And then, of course, very recently, V Rising, which has been met with huge critical acclaim, and it's been incredible. It's been a great game to play. This game is very much seemingly following in the footsteps, of course, with a couple of twists and turns of their own that really make this a Middle-earth type game. So we'll talk about those more in a little while, but I am very excited about a game like this because honestly, if you put a Lord of the Rings skin onto Valheim or V Rising, I would be very, very happy with that game. So here's to looking forward to this game's future. Alright, number 2, let's talk about the procedural generation in this game. This game is set in a procedurally generated dwarven realm of Moria, where no 2 adventures will be alike, and every expedition is traversable either solo or online with companions. Players can mine to craft greater gear and resources, but be aware that mining makes noise, and noise created in the quiet deep threatens to awaken the dangers below. Where there's clatter, there's combat. Excavate the mysteries of 3 legendary mountains, extract precious metals, scrape to survive, and battle unspeakable forces to learn the secret of the shadow that lurks within. Now, one thing that I'm really interested in from the developers, and I hope to learn from them very soon, is what do the expeditions entail? Is this going to be like a Valheim where you go into a dangerous area, you collect resources, and then come back to your base? Or is this going to be more of an MMO ARPG where, lots of different dwarf camps are building up their settlements everywhere? I'm actually very interested in that. Is this going to be a procedurally generated everlasting and existing world, or is this going to be something that goes away and you can save and quit and then come back to? That's going to be a very fascinating thing, but for now, we do know that no 2 game worlds will be alike, which is a very positive thing. It gives this game a really high replayability factor, and so that's one other reason to be excited about this game. Now, number 3, really quickly, is that this is going to be a multiplayer experience. This is going to allow teams of dwarves. It looks in the pictures like possibly teams of up to 6 dwarves, although that could just be in the pictures that are shown on the website, are going to be allowed to go in, team up, go find resources, and fight the monsters within Moria. And one interesting thing to note here is that it seems like the developers are taking on the lore of the dwarves within this fellowship system. Here's what it says on their website: Experience the fellowship of the dwarves like never before, with the rich lore of the iconic fantasy world from J.R.R. Tolkien interwoven into the very fabric of the Lord of the Rings Return to Moria. Now, that could just be marketing speech, but it would be interesting to see what it is like to actually be in fellowship with dwarves in the Lord of the Rings. Of course, a lot of people look at the films and say that they didn't do the dwarves great justice because the dwarves weren't just comic relief. The dwarves in the books were actually very resistant to evil. They formed very close fellowships and bonds within their race, and so it will be interesting to see if, of course, this is marketing jargon, or if this is something where they really weave some of those really deep elements of dwarf lore into the story. Okay, so let's talk about gameplay mechanics. What's going to set this game apart? And there's a couple of things in here that are really, really interesting. The first thing in the gameplay mechanics section is the survive the dark mechanic. So here's what the website says: to survive the treacherous mines of Moria, players must conserve resources, hunt and gather for food, and manage their sleep, temperature, and noise levels. Utilize dynamic light systems for safety and to blaze a path further into the darkness. Battle unspeakable evils and survive hordes of monstrous orcs in visceral combat while uncovering the secret of the shadow that looms within the mountain. So that gives us a lot there. It sounds like there's going to be sleep mechanics, there are going to be hunger mechanics, and it sounds like there's going to be some sort of light mechanic as well, which calls to mind V-Rising with having to escape the sun. But I'm wondering if in the dark the enemies are going to be more powerful, kind of like in a Valheim type game. It's going to be really fascinating to see what they do with that. And of course, at the end of that, they talked about the unspeakable horrors underneath the mountain, and I'm very excited to see how they bring to life the idea of the nameless horrors that Tolkien talked about in The Lord of the Rings. It's going to be a fascinating thing, but that's only the first big gameplay mechanic. The second big gameplay mechanic is, of course, base building. You see this in the trailer, but obviously there are going to be bases to build with your friends, very reminiscent, of course, of Valheim and V-Rising. But this is what the website says. Find solace from the darkness. Reveal and clear new locations to create architecture on a grand scale. Get creative and construct bases from scratch or build upon the existing environment. Beware the evils which seek to destroy dwarven progress. Now it's going to be interesting to see how they really play this into a mine type situation. Will there be a roof because of course it's underground? How grand can we make these scales? But of course this kind of leads us back to that idea that there is going to be darkness in this game that we need to get away from. It does make me think that maybe the nameless horrors are only going to come out at night. Maybe the Balrogs will come out at night, things like that. It'll be interesting to see how they play that one. The third gameplay mechanic that they have is rebuild and reshape Moria. Now this is going to be really cool for the Lord of the Rings fans because here's what it says on their website. Restore the long-lost ancient kingdom of Khazad-dûm to its former glory, recovering dwarven landmarks as the story progresses. Resurrect old mines and refire their forges to yield their untouched resources. Now this does make me think that these procedurally generated worlds are not going to be an MMO style world because it talks about a story that you follow. Now that can still happen, but it does seem like this is going to be a very linear, maybe just you and maybe your friends playing alongside, maybe more like a Valheim would be. But it is an interesting thing to say that we could uncover these lost realms of Moria. And of course, because this takes place in the 4th age of Lord of the Rings, there could be some really cool things here. You could maybe have the halls of Khazad-dûm, maybe the bridge, you could have Balin's tomb. It would be a really cool thing to uncover these spaces, and maybe as you restore the kingdom, maybe there's a little bit of a civilization type thing where you could actually build up the resources throughout Moria. There's a lot to play with here, and I'm excited to see what happens. All right, so those are some of those gameplay mechanics. It does seem to lean heavily into the survival mechanics, but let's talk really quickly about something that I'm really excited about, which is character customization. I always love this in these games, and I really hope that they do a great job with this. Here's what it says on their website. Players become part of Dwarven legend as they create their own dwarf in the custom character creator. Dwarves can be customized in a variety of ways to create a unique Dwarven identity. Then during gameplay, players can find and craft armor and weapons to further enhance their unique style. Now, I'm very excited about a good Dwarven character creator. We don't get a lot of those. A lot of the times when you get a Lord of the Rings game, they focus very heavily on the men or the elves, but I'm excited to see what they really do with the Dwarven culture, the Dwarven lore, and really being able to create a really cool dwarf character. It's going to be a cool thing to see. Now, before we go on, let's talk developer history, because this is one of the most important things when it comes to these really early looks at the game. You want to see if you've got a developer who has a great track record with games like this in the PC realm so that they can pull this thing off, because this has a lot of hype around it right now. A lot of people are very excited about this, they're curious, and so I think it's an important thing to look back at the developer. Now, this game is being developed by Free Range Games. They are an indie developer. They don't have a parent company, and they've developed some games that are not in the PC realm. They've developed some VR, AR, and mobile games. Those games range from not being the best in reviews. They have a VR game that's a Patrick Mahomes football type game, not very good in review, but then they have a turn-based card collecting game that is on Apple Arcade and is on Steam, and it's got some actually pretty decent reviews. So it seems like they've had a little bit of experience in making good games. And the only bad reviews that I could find were from the, Patrick Mahomes game, which is a VR game. And I think VR is in such new development. It's probably hard to create a really good VR game. So when we look at stuff that's been around for longer, like an App Store game, it does seem like they've done a pretty decent job with that game. I've been playing it a little bit, and it's pretty engaging. It's pretty fun. Now that does leave us to wonder, now if they've never developed a dedicated for PC or console game, how good are they going to do with a game like this when they have to go up against giants like Minecraft, V-Rising, and Valheim? Well, the good news is they are taking on a publishing company, and that publishing company is North Beach Gaming. And North Beach Gaming has been very engaged with some large games. One of the biggest ones is 7 Days to Die, which is another survival game based on PC that's become very, very popular, and it does have an 8.3 on Metacritic, meaning that it's a pretty well-received game by the users. And so it's a good thing that this indie company is taking on a parent-ish company, some mentorship in that space to really help make sure that this game gets sent off well to the PC realm. But this is going to be their first real big jump and foray into the PC realm, so I'm excited to see and engage with these developers over time. Hey, and be sure to keep it here with your subscription. Go on ahead and subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be doing a deep developer dive with Free Range Games a little bit later this week. We're going to really look deeply into their games, their reviews, what they've done before, and then I am hoping to get a developer interview very soon. I've got requests out to the team right now, so be sure to subscribe to this channel if you're interested in finding out more about these games. All right, now let's get into one of my favorite topics for number 7, which is lore. I love the Lord of the Rings. I'm a huge lore nerd, and so if you don't like lore, you can go ahead and skip right past this section. There should be chapters below you there, but if you're interested in lore, it's a very interesting thing that this game takes place in the 4th Age. It's one of the most important parts of this game to me because they've chosen a very safe age to go with. For those of you that don't know, the War of the Ring, which is the Lord of the Rings series, took place in the 3rd Age of Middle-earth. And as soon as Aragorn became king, the 4th Age began of Middle-earth. And so Tolkien didn't really write too much about this, so it actually offers them a really good canvas to write this artwork on. Now, they do have a couple of things in here that are interesting, but first let's go ahead and look to their own blog about the lore in this game. We've put countless of hours into research and lifetimes of fandom into the Lord of the Rings Return to Moria. We think that the fact that we get to make a game set in Middle-earth's 4th Age, following the dwarves as they explore Moria and attempt to reclaim what was once lost is the absolute coolest thing ever. We're taking care with J.R.R. Tolkien's world to ensure we're bringing you the best game we can about Middle-earth's greatest crafters surviving their most dangerous quest. Now, this is a cool thing for me as a nerd because it does sound like they've got some nerddom in them. The nerds like me that like Lord of the Rings, the biggest thing that we want from the content creation in this game is just take care of the lore. You can go off of it a little bit. It's a video game. It doesn't have to be perfectly true to book, but take care of the lore. Know it and be a fan of the lore because that means that you're going to create a true to the spirit game. Now, there are two really interesting things when you read more about this. First of all, it says that these expeditions are led by Gimli Lockbearer, which is an interesting title because, of course, the name Gimli recalls the Return of the King, Fellowship of the Ring, and Two Towers Gimli that journeyed with the Fellowship to destroy the ring. Well, in the 4th Age, in the book, Gimli does two things that are significant. One, he doesn't go to Moria in the books. And what Gimli does at the end of the books is he goes to the Glittering Caves, which are these incredible caves behind Helm's Deep, and he takes a band of dwarves there and they set up a settlement there. So it would be interesting to see if this Gimli in the game is the same Gimli as that, because that wouldn't really fall in line with the book. But there is a way that they could kind of shoehorn some stuff in there, because it does say at the end of Return of the King that Gimli and a band of dwarves take Mithril to rebuild the gates of Minas Tirith. And there were only two places that Mithril could be found. One was, of course, in Moria. We know that from the movies. But then two, it says in the books that Sauron in Barad-dûr, which was his big tower fortress in Mordor, had a lot of Mithril stored up. So it is very possible, and most people assume that the Mithril from the gates of Minas Tirith in the books came from Barad-dûr, that they went and raided it, they grabbed the Mithril and then made the doors up again. What the developers in this game could, of course, if they really wanted to do it, they could say that Gimli actually went first to Moria, mined the Mithril, and then brought it back to Minas Tirith. It kind of fits, but hey, it's a video game. It can be fun either way, but it will be kind of interesting to see what they do with that lore. And again, the second thing that is really interesting about the lore in this game is, of course, the nameless horrors and the Balrogs. Now, the Balrogs are very rare creatures in the 3rd Age. They were very abundant in the 1st and 2nd, but in the 3rd Age, they're very rare. Gandalf kills one of them, Durin's Bane, so there weren't really assumed to be more Balrogs, but in my initial trailer reaction, which you can watch on my channel, I said, you have to have Balrogs. Like, regardless of whether or not it's good lore, you have to have them. So I am really interested to see what they do with that. The other thing is that Tolkien does talk about nameless horrors. When Gandalf is running through the mines of Moria, chasing after the Balrog after he falls from the bridge, he talks about nameless things and nameless horrors that exist. And I'm excited to see what their interpretations of that will be. I'm assuming that with the nighttime mechanic, we should get some of these nameless horrors that maybe come out at night that you have to level up with really, really high to actually kill. I think that'll be a really interesting mechanic, and I'm excited to see how they actually pull that off. All right, number 8, and this is gonna be a bummer for some of you guys, but this is going to be an Epic Games exclusive. This won't be on Steam, this won't be on any of the other popular platforms, which for a lot of people is a bummer, but I would hold your horses on the kind of bummer part. I did some research as to why this would be an Epic Games exclusive, and it actually might bring us some comfort when it comes to an indie developer developing their first PC game. And this is from Epic Games' site. It says this: Epic works in partnership with developers and publishers to offer games exclusively on the store. In exchange for exclusivity, Epic provides them with financial support for development and marketing, which enables them to build a more polished game with significantly less uncertainty for the creators. And so what this means is that Epic Games has probably, invested a good chunk of money into this. Now, you may love or hate Epic Games, but more money for an indie developer to really develop a good game is a good thing. And so I am excited that they have a good publishing company that can guide them in their quest to making a great game. And I'm not a huge fan of the Epic Games Store, but I am excited that an indie company is going to have some help with their marketing. They're going to have some help with development from a company that has a lot of experience developing games. And so I kind of think that's a good thing. And number 9, rounding out the Fellowship of the Ring of ideas here, and things you need to know is this game is going to be developed in Unreal Engine 5. This is an awesome thing. Unreal Engine 5, of course, came out this year. It boasts some absolutely incredible graphics, incredible engine to build a game on, and I'm excited to see what a Middle-earth fantasy realm will look like in Unreal Engine 5. Of course, there is a cartoon style to this game. They're not trying to be, the most visually fidelitous game, but there are a lot of cool things that they can do. If you look at the trailer, there are some really cool looking vistas in the game where you can see forever, and it looks really magnificent. So I'm really interested in seeing how they bring Moria to life. Now, this is supposed to be an incredible realm filled with beauty and wonder, and I'm excited to see how Unreal Engine 5 is able to be a help to the developers as they pull off what I hope to be a visually stunning game. All right, so my initial thoughts, I'm excited. I love Lord of the Rings games. I think the more that we can have, the better. I love playing Lord of the Rings online. I've played all the other ones. I'm a Lord of the Rings diehard. I'm a nerd. And so I'm excited to see what they do with this. Now, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think anytime that you have a first game, there are things that you're bound to miss. But you know what? They've got some really good, help from the Epic Games Store, hopefully with some investment. Hopefully they're gonna have some experienced help from North Beach as well. And so I'm actually pretty excited about this game. I'm gonna continue to cover this game, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want more coverage of this game. We're gonna try to get the developers on. We will have a developer deep dive later on this week, so be sure to keep it here. But as always, if you liked the video, like the video for me. If you'd like more of it, subscribe. And as always, friends, before we go, you are more loved than you know, and you are so much more valuable than you realize. I hope you have an incredible day, and I will see you in the next one. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave it a like. It's totally free to do. Subscribe if you want to see more. And as always, I'm live on Twitch over at twitch.tv/BrightLifeCommunity. We're a community of positive and uplifting gamers. Come find a friend to raid with, grab loot with, and just enjoy life together with. Hope you have an awesome day. Be blessed, and you are so loved and so valuable.